Welcome to This Explainer. When we read about life stories we admire, the words authors choose to describe those actions do a whole lot more than just lay out dry history. They actually give us this incredible layered peek into a person's character. Today, we're diving into the language of legacy and exploring the amazing nuances in how we describe historical achievements. So let's kick things off with a pretty fundamental question. How much power does a single word actually hold in history? Think about it. How does the language we use shape our admiration for the people who served? It's super easy to just look at dates and locations, right? But the verbs and the adjectives we attach to a person's life, that's what completely frames how their legacy is remembered by future generations. And we've got a really fascinating anchor for this today. We're looking at a textbook excerpt detailing the story of Dang Thuy Trom. If you're not familiar, she was a 27-year-old surgeon operating right in the middle of the war. Her personal diary was actually saved from being burned by an American soldier, and decades later, it amazingly made its way back to her mother. Her story is literally the perfect lens for us to break down the anatomy of a legacy and see how words define our heroes. Let's look at our first linguistic pillar here, proactive patriotism. Let's see how this concept builds the foundation of her story. As you'll see in the text, there are specific words used that really scream proactive choice. At just 24 years old, she made the deliberate decision to leave the relative safety of her life in Hanoi and head straight out to the front lines. Words like volunteered or devoting are absolutely crucial here. They signify a choice to give yourself entirely to a cause. It wasn't about being forced, it was this incredibly active, selfless decision driven by pure patriotism. Now, the real linchpin in this passage is the phrase, devoting her youth. That right there is the cornerstone of her legacy. Notice it doesn't say she spent her youth or lost it. By using the word devoting, the text frames her actions as a deliberate, conscious, and just an incredibly selfless gift to her country and to the patient she saved. Moving right along, let's look at another critical piece of the puzzle, the weight of duty.
So, for a surgeon stationed in a field hospital in the Quang Ngai province, a phrase like doing her duty wasn't just, a casual job description. It implies a massive sense of moral responsibility and steadfast reliability. In this context, duty meant literally operating under fire. It meant staying with her patients right up to the very end, no matter the personal danger she faced.
And this line right here brilliantly captures that weight. She wrote her diary while she operated on injured soldiers. Just picture that for a second. You have a young woman finding pockets of time for deep, poetic reflection in her diary, right in the middle of the visceral, chaotic, and totally terrifying reality of a jungle field hospital. The language perfectly contrasts her introspective humanity against the intense, external demands of her duty. Of course, you can't talk about history without the context, so let's shift to our next pillar, the just struggle. Take a look at the glossary entry from the source text featuring the exact term resistance war. This isn't just your generic, everyday term for a conflict. Linguistically, it specifically highlights the struggle against an occupying force. It completely sets the stage so we can understand the motivations and the absolute life-or-death stakes for the people living through it. And framing her sacrifice with this specific terminology, it's a real game changer. It elevates her actions. She's not just performing isolated medical feats out in a vacuum. Instead, her work is framed as a vital, absolutely necessary part of a much broader collective effort for a nation's independence, identity, and sovereignty. The words take her individual actions and tie them directly to the destiny of the entire nation. So, what does this all mean? That brings us to why nuance matters. Why do we even care about these specific semantic details? When we stack these specific concepts together, that proactive choice to volunteer, the moral reliability of doing her duty, and the collective struggle of a resistance war, they do something kind of magical. We move way beyond just rattling off a list of historical facts. Instead, we get this rich, complete picture of a woman whose every single action was rooted in a profound love for her family and her country. The language itself is literally the paint for this historical portrait. By really paying attention to these subtle textual nuances, I hope we've all gained a much deeper appreciation for history's heroes today. It makes you realize that a person's legacy isn't just a list of what they did on paper. It's the immense spirit, the courage, and the unwavering commitment with which they did it. I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on as we wrap up. As you reflect on the careful, deliberate language we use to tell the stories of the people we admire, what words are writing the story of your life right now? What words will define your legacy?
Thanks so much for exploring this with me today, and keep looking for the deeper meaning in the words around you.